It is time for to take a look at some other Tennessee basketball players. As
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
where did Jonas Aidoo go?
He went to Arkansas.
Where did Mr. Awaka go?
Tobe Awaka went to Arizona.
Okay. That is a compliment to Tennessee. Do you realize that they just had two players transfer out of their program for whatever reason, and they ended up at Arkansas with John Calipari, who you can't argue can bring in talent. May not be a good X's and O's guy, but is bringing in guys. And then Arizona, another basketball school, brings in another one of Tennessee's players. Is Tennessee to the point in which other basketball historically strong teams are taking their leftovers?
That's certainly what it looks like. Now, that part, what you just said, is very clear with Awaka, because I talked to Jimmy when you were off, Dave, and I talked to, and you have your own reporting. Awaka wanted to come back. Tobe Awaka was testing the NIL market in the portal, and he wanted to come back to Tennessee. He backed off because Rick Barnes decided, I don't really need you. I'll get this Ohio State center, and I'll get this Charlotte center. And if you want to come back, fine, but you're going to have to compete with them for playing time. And then he decided, and then the reason he didn't come back is he didn't like the competition that was back there. That's what happened with Tobe Awaka. And so Arizona said, we'll take you. Basically, Awaka's judgment was, I got a better chance of playing at Arizona than I do at Tennessee. That
You realize over the history of college basketball, pretty much every decade that you could look at, that would sound insane.
Every single decade, that would sound insane. Every single one. But he did it. Jonas Aidoo was just running. He was just running from Vol Twitter. By the way, Jonas, you're not going to like Hog Twitter either, just so you know. But he was running from Vol Twitter. That's what that was.
They weren't so bad. They tried to get on me a little bit. They weren't so bad.
Oh, they probably are so convinced that they're like, we got to play from Tennessee. John Calipari knows what he's doing. Yeah. And they have no idea what they
had to pay for Awaka and chickens and pies because they still use the barter system. But
you mean Aidoo?
Oh, Aidoo, excuse me. Aidoo, yes. But again, Tennessee's just right in the thick of players moving, and this is right up there with the blue bloods. I mean, Arizona's as close to a blue blood as you can get. Arkansas second tier, but I mean, you lose players like that, you've got a pretty good basketball team on your hands.
Absolutely, you do. And I think they were thinking NBA to a certain degree. Well, Awaka is trying to develop some. I think Awaka, again, for Awaka, it was about, he tested the NIL market and then he played himself. So he went to Arizona, and that's a huge testament. I'm going to tell you what's going through Jonas Aidoo's mind at Arkansas right now. This is as far as Jonas Aidoo thought it through. He said, John Calipari. Well, no, it wasn't even checked. No, wasn't even that. It was, he saw John Calipari, NBA draft picks. I go play for John Calipari. I get drafted into the NBA. No thought whatsoever about the development he needs to do, the toughness he needs to bring, or anything like that to actually be an NBA draft pick. He looked at far.
You're really getting inside his brain a little bit there. And even though I tend to agree with everything you said, it still, to me, would have been wise for him to hang out. Now, I'm curious, because I was off. Did Jimmy Imes give us any indication that Aidoo was asked to leave?
No. Aidoo nor Awaka were asked to leave. Rick Barnes, just so you guys know, thought Aidoo was going to be one of his greatest development projects in his entire career of coaching. He really believed in Aidoo. He was shocked when Aidoo left. And I think genuinely what happened is Aidoo didn't like the criticism he got from the Elite Eight game. Now, Dave, you know that, like, you and I know this.
Wait, you think he left because of criticism he got?
Yes, he ran. He absolutely ran. He ran because it made no sense. He ran because Rick Barnes was sticking his neck out for Aidoo the way Rick Barnes never sticks his neck out for players, Dave. I don't know if you know this, but like Rick Barnes usually is willing to throw his players under the bus to a certain degree.
No, I know that, yeah.
Rick Barnes went out of his way to say Aidoo will be better. He'll bounce back from this. He was so much of a believer in what Aidoo could do. And then the fact that Rick Barnes developed you for the NBA. He turned Grant Williams into a first-round draft pick. A 6'8" forward who can't touch the rim is not usually a first-round draft pick, okay? And Rick Barnes turned him into one, so everything was smart about him staying at Tennessee. Aidoo ran, and I can put the pieces together because the Purdue game showed he's mentally weak. And so with that in mind, he bolted because he didn't like Vol Twitter going at him.
I'll tell you this. That's a sad reason to leave if you're that mentally fragile and things aren't going to work out for you elsewhere if that's the case. I wonder a little bit if this was combined with an NIL issue. What I've been told about Rick Barnes is he doesn't like the NIL aspect of it and he lets somebody handle it. My question to you, Caleb, is that sustainable? Because wouldn't you prefer if all things are equal? I don't know, a younger coach like a Josh Heupel that might be hip to the new ways of college athletics. I mean, can Rick Barnes really change and take full advantage of the NIL game? Because if somebody can, you can have a really fun basketball program.
There's one layer to this with Rick Barnes, that reason I think it works. This is crazy because he's not Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. But for the players Rick Barnes wants to get using NIL, it's not recruits. Like I said, it is transfer portal guys. And for transfer portal juniors and seniors, Dave, there's an NIL discount to go. There's a Rick Barnes discount on NIL because Rick Barnes will get you to the NBA.
I want to go back to something you said about Aidoo. And I think you gave him too much credit than I did. Boundless Moving, from a 2-hour minimum to the turnkey operations, they've got you covered. Boundless Moving. Again, Boundless Moving in East Tennessee and in Charlotte. Boundless Moving moved me. They can move you. I don't think Aidoo was concerned about the NBA. I think that he looked at North Carolina, and I believe Baylor were his other schools. And he looked at John Calipari, can line me up with the most cash right now. Because a lot of that money that followed Calipari via Nike from Memphis to Lexington will now follow him to Fayetteville. So I will bet you that there's a more significant check waiting on Aidoo in Fayetteville, Arkansas than Rick Barnes had waiting for him in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Pratt Pavilion Center.
You know, but there's a Calipari discount too because of his track record of getting guys to the NBA. And now,
so let me ask you this, Caleb. Would you take, okay, let's just say it's $100,000 a year. That's the going price for Caleb. How tall are you?
5'9.5".
Okay,
There's no going price for me.
A 5'9" guard is who we got rocking on. So let's say you get $100,000. Okay. Would you take less to play for Barnes, Calipari, or both? And which one would be more likely? One gets you ready for the NBA. One kind of gets you ready for the NBA. One gets you paid right away. I'm going to Arkansas.
I'm taking less to play for Barnes.
Okay.
And here's why. Calipari, and this is the greatest misnomer in sports. Calipari is not getting these guys to the NBA. Calipari is babysitting these guys for a year, and then they're going to the NBA because if it wasn't for one and done, they'd all be first-round draft picks anyway. Is there anybody, Dave, is there anybody of since one and done started, these top 5 draft picks Calipari produces, is there anybody that wasn't already a top 5 draft pick that nobody heard of, and then he went to play for Calipari, and then he became a top 5 draft pick? Have you heard of anybody Calipari turned into an NBA prospect?
No, I think Derrick Rose showed up on campus pretty good.
Derrick Rose was going to be a number 1 draft. Yes, exactly. Derrick Rose.
It could have been Coach Caleb and Coach Dave.
Yes, Derrick Rose, Tyreek Evans, John Wall, Anthony Davis. I can just go down the list. It's not like you were like, oh, well, nobody heard of these guys until John Calipari came in and he turned them into NBA draft picks. No one has ever said that about those guys.
It's a rootin', tootin', shooting. There we go. With NBA money, you're incredibly short-sighted to not take Barnes. That's what Elias says. Elias, I agree with that. Earlier, I want to clarify, I was looking at it from Aidoo's perspective. Not that I would take that perspective, and not that that's the advice that I would give my son or daughter in that type of situations. But Elias says the kids are going to be kids, and so many of them have cousins and uncles in their ear. They certainly do, and they can get you. Yes.
Sorry.
Destroyed my awesome transition. Go ahead.
Sorry, well, no, I was just going to say, here is the worst part about this, what's so short-sighted. A lot of them go because Calipari will convince them they can be stars in the NBA. Guys, the best job in the world, and Dave, I challenge you to find me a better job than this. The best job in the world is to be an NBA role player who logs 10, 15 minutes a game, plays maybe 5, 7, 10 years. You get generation.
JJ Redick made like $180 million.
Yes, exactly.
JJ Redick.
All you have to do is the coaches will say, give me 10 to 15 minutes a game. Give me those 10 to 15 minutes, and you'll walk away with generational wealth that could never, ever, your family could never blow through.